First item is approval of July 7th building committee minutes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 2, facilities update. Mr. Toddy.
Hello.
Hello.
Stand by. Here we go. Here's my first slide tonight. I'm just going to park that right there. Let you look at that. Enjoy the lettering that we got installed for the
I'm not
Joanne.
hearing you, I'm sorry.
I just pointing out the lettering that was installed for the Joanne Houston Auditorium. Custodial, we have filled all of the open day positions, which is great, and that's largely thanks to the job fair. So we did pretty good on that. And this is really our first summer that we're kind of doing a pre-COVID regimen. We spent a summer moving furniture out, we spent a summer moving furniture back in, and we spent a lot of time disinfecting. I was recently at a camp where the nurse was explaining to the young campers, if you sanitize your hands, use hand sanitizer, and you use hand sanitizer, and you use hand sanitizer, after a while you got a bunch of dead germs all over your hands. Well, disinfecting is using the hand sanitizer. Cleaning is coming in, and you got to wash your hands. You got to wash the stuff too. You can't just hand sanitize your hands. You got to wash them. It's the same with our buildings. We can't just sanitize them. We got to wash them. And this is the first year since COVID that we're getting into a really deep cleaning, like we always did in the past. And it feels good. It feels great. And we're in really good shape with the cleaning. We're about 75% done, and we are dead on track to be done well before the students and teachers return. So we're in great shape, custodial and cleaning wise. The grounds, we're operating at 50% strength now, and we're hoping to onboard another 25% of strength. So we're good for now. Fall sports and band camp are starting. We actually started painting lines today for band camp, and when fall sports hit, we're going to need those positions filled. It's going to become really difficult for the grounds guys to do what they need to do and support sports if we're only at 50% strength. We will find a way through. We always do. Maintenance, we've Chamberlain serving line / abatement. Remember, they started as a project to replace the serving line. You can see the new equipment on the right. But as we were tearing out the old equipment, we realized that the floor needed to be removed and abated. And also the picture on the right, you can see the new floor is installed. So that project is complete with the exception of the final mechanical and electrical hookups for the new serving line. And it looks great in there. So, well, nice job on that. I spoke to you last month about the CTE wooden truss with the fire retardant chemicals. So we did add an extra inspection. Foley, Buell, Roberts, and Associates were on site July 14th. They inspected the area. Their conclusion reads, in part, given that this is a single compression member brake that could have been missed previously, we do not feel that the discovery of this brake warrants accelerating the inspection schedule. So the structural people have been out. We've showed them everything that we've found, and they're not too concerned about it. So we'll continue to monitor that, as well as the middle school truss system. I spoke to you last month about Nancy Loud ceiling failing above the suspended ceiling in the stair tower, and we completed this project in-house with our maintenance guys. You can see we've got it dressed out right there, and from where that guy's standing, that's like a 2-story ceiling. There's a long reach up as under the tower portion of the building. And really it goes back to the tower had been leaking years ago. The tower leaked for quite a while. That's a problem that my predecessor repaired, and now finally the plaster underneath that leak caught up with us. And it's been removed and made safe, and we'll continue to do what we need to do there. Maple Street Magnet School, the electric service upgrade. You can see in the picture on the left, that's a brand new utility pole. And you can see from the right of the picture, there's 3 wires coming into it. From there, they go underground to feed the new transformer, also shown in that picture. And from the transformer, they go back underground and into the building. They come out in the basement, where on the picture on the right, and that's our new main service. The old electric service, which you see at the corner of the building, the pipe that runs up and down with the wire connected to it, that will all be demolished and removed after we do our final switchover. And the final switchover is scheduled for August 27th. So we'll get that done, and we'll have a full new electric service to the building. We also replaced one of the floors. This is the kindergarten. This was the worst floor. That floor came out. It was a subfloor, a layer of wood finish floor, another layer of wood finish floor, and a layer of carpet, all glued together, and all 3 levels were failing. And so that came out down to cement, rebuilt the subfloor, and put in the VCT floor. And as you can see, it came out great. It looks really bright and nice in there. Very happy with those results.
I appreciate how you matched the color of the school.
That's,
I saw that in Chamberlain too. I was like,
yeah, we try to,
all right.
when we can, we try to pick the school colors and get them as much into the building as we can.
Nice.
Keep that esprit de corps, right?
Yeah.
William Allen School Woodman Ave project. This is the drainage basin that the city constructed in the playground adjacent to the playground structure. And you can see here how it fits in. The playground structure is on the left and the basin is on the right. I'll go back to the first picture. So this has been seeded. It's not yet complete. The next steps are we're going to put a fence around the top of that berm on the inside where it slopes down, so it will create a walking path around it. And then we hope to add some granite curb to create like amphitheater style seating in the side of the slope that goes down to it. And I think when we get all of that, it will actually be a really nice addition to the space. It will be an enhancement, and it will help serve the city. This project is a little bit behind schedule, such that it will probably end up affecting the bus routes and the parent drop-off patterns. We've been working with the assistant superintendent, the bus company, and the principal, getting some drawings together of what the new proposed changes are, so we can start messaging that out to parents as soon as possible, so that everybody's on the same page. Some minor changes, but changes nonetheless. I spoke to you last month about the Security Action for Education, the SAFE grants, and told you we'd be applying for those, and we did. We applied for 2 projects. One of them is a reconfiguration of the middle school entryway to create a true man-lock and a safety entrance for a school, and the other one is a new camera system for the Maple Street Magnet School. So we'll see where we land with those. Grant applications have both been filed. The Spalding High School, the drainage and paving project is set to start next week. On Monday, we're going to start tearing pavement out. So they'll be doing this pavement project at the same time as band camp. So we've made arrangements with band camp, and they'll be accessing the lower field from a little bit of a different pattern for them, a little bit of different traffic flow. But we're excited to get that work done, and that's going to be a big safety improvement for that facility. It's something we really needed to do. Spalding High School auditorium update. I wish I had one. We're in the exact same place we were a month ago. We're still waiting for the final lighting and the curtain. Everything else is 100%. Just need to get the lighting fixtures, and then we can rehang the curtain, and we'll be done. And that's just a supply chain thing. Air quality improvement project. We're plugging away. We're still finishing up Maple Street, Gonick, and we'll be starting at Chamberlain. And we also are coordinating some new work at McClellan, which was an addition to that project. Computerized maintenance management system, the master library product. We've completed our 2nd onboarding meeting. Our 3rd and final onboarding meeting is scheduled for August 10th, and we'll be ready to go live shortly thereafter. So that system will be up and running in place. We can get some tutorials out for new users to familiarize themselves with it, but it's all really intuitive, simple software, so people should be pretty happy with it. And Spalding High School Field Storage Building. I've already been asked this tonight. Where's the garage door? Again, it's a supply chain issue. We've been hoping they get deliveries on Mondays and Fridays, and every Tuesday and Monday I'm on the phone with them to see did it come in, and we were hoping to get it this week. We're still hoping maybe tomorrow it comes in. And the contractors, the second they get it, they will come put it in. I guess it's a thing to do with the springs. You can get the garage door, you can't get springs for these things. So as soon as we get the materials, we'll get it done. In the meantime, because band camp is next week, and we hope to use some parent volunteer labor to move some of the set pieces out of the old barn into this structure, the contractors agreed at their expense to build a temporary plywood barn door that will allow us to secure this space.
Okay.
So next week during band camp, whether or not the garage door has arrived, I'll be able to secure this so we can start moving things in then. Work orders for the period of July 8th to August 4th. We completed 51, down from 118 the last period. That's a big jump, but we've been also, the maintenance guys have been working on larger projects, so that doesn't surprise me at all. Created 71, which is down from 81. It gives us a close ratio of 0.71 to 1, which is down from 1.46 to 1 the previous reporting period. I now have open 114 work orders. And that's all I have for a facilities update.
Mr. Todd, if you could, just in case we don't get the funding for the 2 grants you applied for, do you have an approximate number for those? The magnet school and
The magnet school was about 26,000. That was a firm quoted project that was reviewed.
Okay.
The entryway is kind of from, we don't have a full number on it yet. We'd be large enough that we would have to go out to bid, but we're assuming it's going to be about $70,000. We're mostly just storefront glass and there's a little soft cutting to create a new doorway. The idea is in a true secure man loft, you've got a secure door to the exterior where people can come, push the intercom and talk to the office. The office can then buzz them into a vestibule. They don't yet have access to the school and they're stuck in the vestibule, they can't go anywhere. They can then get buzzed directly into the office without going into the school, or they can get buzzed into the school. The way we have it now, people visiting who want to get into the office, they have to get buzzed into the school. Then they go into the office, and that's the avenue that we seek to cut off in these types of projects.
Okay, thank you.
Modulars, dehumidifiers keeping up, no problems?
The dehumidifiers are keeping up. We've been, I personally walked them a couple of times. Mr. Materno has personally walked them a couple of times, and Mr. Prue has personally walked them a couple of times. We've held off on a cleaning at William Allen and Modulars because both of the air conditioners are currently broken. And the air conditioning helps with the removing the moisture and dehumidification. But they are uncomfortably dry right now, which is exactly what we want to hear.
That's exactly, another year limping along. All right. Gotcha.
So I have a question. You said the Maple project's going to be finished on the 27th?
Yes.
When does Maple start? It starts before then?
It starts Monday.
Monday, so,
That old electric service is serving, they have electricity now.
okay.
What we've scheduled it out to then, because we're gonna shut the whole building down and swap the service over to the new. So right now, the new's all in place, and the old's all existing.
Okay,
And we just gotta make that crossover, and that will,
okay.
we've got it scheduled for Saturday, so it won't interfere with anything. They'll be fine from now till then.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else have questions? Dave? Thank you.
Thank you.
5-year plan?
That's me.
Dave?
I have some stuff for 5-year, if I may.
Sir?
Sir.
Want to click it? I'll let you know.
It's order.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I gotta do.
So I'm gonna throw a whole lot of information at you right now, and I'm not really expecting everyone to digest everything in full right now. I'll kind of just touch on this stuff, and hopefully this will become a nice starting place for many conversations in the future. Okay, so I'm kind of calling this oh. I'm not caught up here. Seem to have a little lag in our. Let me back up. back in. There we go. Okay, so state of the schools. These are, as you know, we contracted with energy efficient investments to do a control project, taking advantage of federal funds. They partnered with Banwell Architects as part of that project. And both of those companies, in working up on updating the control systems, they just stopped and did a holistic kind of a, a 60,000-foot overview of all of our facilities. And so what you see here is a combination of work that Banwell did, work that EEI did, and work that I did to kind of put it all together. And I'm going to ask you to think about it in kind of three pieces. And the elementary school piece, we have lots of students. They don't all go to the same elementary school. We've got a bunch of different elementary schools, but that's one piece, is the elementary solution. The middle school, most everybody, the overwhelming majority of everybody, will go through that building, so that's its own kind of solution. And the high school is the same thing. We've only got the one, and well, CTE, we count that as two, but it's the one facility that people will end up there. So I'm thinking about this as there's an elementary solution, a middle school solution, and a high school solution. And before we begin looking at anything specific, I just want to talk a little bit about the research that goes behind any of these facilities thinking. And there is well over 100 years worth of peer-reviewed research. It's documented a million different ways to Sunday about the effects of buildings on employees, the effects of space and indoor air or indoor environmental quality on productivity, the effects of learning environment on students. There's so much of that research that it's really difficult to pick any one or two to talk about, but the one I threw at the top here is from the Harvard School of Public Health, and this was a review of peer-reviewed literature. So they didn't do any new studies. What they did was they sat down and they read as many studies as they could get their hands on. And they said, well, what's the overwhelming, what is everything saying? And everything is saying that it's unambiguous that a school building influences student health, thinking, and performance. Another survey from Chicago Public Schools and District of Columbia found that the quality of the environment is directly related to retainage of teachers. People don't want to work in buildings that aren't well kept and nice and up to date. If they look at another district has a brand new school, they'd rather work there. So those are kind of the pieces of research that I'd like to just have in the back of your mind as we continue this discussion. So the architectural assessments were for all of our schools. We didn't look at the Credo Center because it's basically been brand new. We're looking more at the Spalding piece. And Bud Carlson isn't part of that because we rent space here. But these are the schools that we're talking about. And generally, conditions frequently found, portables and modulars is kind of a problem in the district. I don't need to tell you about that. I think everybody knows what we're talking about there. Banwell's review, they say we see double and triple subjects per room. We see art, music, sharing spaces, multipurpose rooms where gym and art and music are sharing spaces with aftercare. There's a lot of shared space. We see a lot of classrooms on stage spaces. We see a lot of administration is undersized, and not necessarily at the entrance. Remember, I was just talking about with the middle school, the way a true entrance should look in our modern times. We don't have that in many of our facilities. And many of our facilities don't lend themselves to have that installed. We've got health offices that are undersized. We've got end of useful life mechanical systems, lack of redundancy in boilers in some of our smaller schools. The construction and safety piece, secure entrances, unenclosed exit stairs, and there's ADA problems, masonry problems, casework replacement is another big one. Acoustic ceiling between rooms is another big one. So these are just common things that we're going to see again and again as we touch each of the schools. So Nancy Loud, we've got a multipurpose room and a library that are undersized. We're trying to use the multipurpose room as a gym as well, and we're storing the tables in the room when we do that. There's really not enough room to do that. Teacher workroom is needed, there's a health office is needed, storage rooms are needed. Nancy Loud, safety and code issues, the secure entrance with the vestibule, the stair corridors. We saw the picture of the guy on the ladder in the stair corridor. That whole stair corridor is supposed to be a fire separation. If there's a fire on the first floor and the stairwell is open, the smoke goes immediately into that stairwell. People on the second floor are running into smoke. It's supposed to be a separate separation. We don't have that in many of our older facilities because that's not the way things were built. We've got ADA problems in this place. Nancy Loud, we've got kindergarten and first graders share exits. You're going to see that one a lot in here. It's another piece about fire safety. The smaller kids, the idea is in a panic situation, you don't want bigger kids running over smaller kids, so the smaller kids have their own ground level discharge. There are stairs at Nancy Loud, it's not a ground level discharge, because you have to get off the porch. Construction items, this is probably the biggest thing I want you to take away from. Stone foundation, moisture migration. Masonry foundation wall repairs are needed. That condition is severe. Masonry column repairs needed. That is severe. Wood clapboard, pre-1978 paint is failing. That is severe. The roof will come around to be needed. The soffits as part of the siding, that condition is severe. We've got aging MEP. We've got a single boiler in the building. There are conditions that are severe. You'll recall that in fiscal 21, we asked for money to do siding repairs. That money was denied. In fiscal 23, we brought up money again to start addressing the safety, the foundation issues, and that money was denied, which is great if we have a plan to move forward. We cannot continue to deny repairing the building without a plan forward, and that's what I'm hoping to drive towards here, is the plan forward. School Street, you're going to see some of the same things. The library is undersized, the office is too small, health office is too small, it's not much more than a larger bathroom. Table storage in the multi-purpose room. The multi-purpose room at School Street is a basement, so it's got columns in it, and the ceiling, I can do a full palm plant on the ceiling. It's not very high, so we've got kids trying to do PE in a space where the ceiling is easily 18 inches lower than this one. It's not ideal, and there's rig runs of ductwork cutting across it. Safety and code items, same thing that we saw earlier. ADA access, kindergarten and first graders sharing access, sharing exits, and the vestibule not secure. The corridors aren't necessarily fire rated. Masonry walls, concrete window seals, again, it's the same kind of things that we saw. School Street School, I'll add, is one of, now we've done enough mitigation that we're down to 2 schools with known ACBM hazards, asbestos-containing building materials. School Street's one of them. The magnet school, we've done a lot of work in the magnet school, but I'm not going to stand here and tell you it's all done, everything's great over there, because it's an older building and it's not without its issues, and if we're going to have an honest review of everything, we're going to look at Maple Street. And again, we've got, the front entrance doesn't lend itself to a secure access. You've got a door outside, and you've got to get halfway down the hall before you meet a receptionist, and she sits basically in the hallway outside of the office. Music and art share a multi-purpose room. The library's undersized, the nurse is undersized. Kindergarten and first graders are sharing access. We have ADA compliance in the building on the first floor only. We've got a lift to get onto the second floor, but the main bathrooms are in kind of these mezzanine levels of the stairwell. There's no way to make those bathrooms handicapped accessible, and right now, somebody's saying we would have to keep all services on the first floor to keep people that needed accessibility in the accessible part of the building. That's what I'm trying to say. There's some masonry repairs that are needed over there. VCT flooring. Now we just saw some of the new floors that we did, and we have money in the current budget to continue to make repairs on the floors. Casework is another problem. Casework is kind of a catch-all term in the construction. It's any of the built-ins, any cabinetry or countertops, that's all casework, and you've got a lot of aging casework at Maple Street. William Allen School, we've got portables. The whole school is built around the staircase. There's, you know, the ADA problems there are, it's pretty difficult to make that school fully accessible. You've got the multipurpose room at the bottom of the staircase. You'd have to add an elevator. And the building has got some significant structural cracks in the back that we've been watching for years. It isn't moving now, it's not falling, but it is significant structural cracks in the back of that building. And the main office and the principal and assistant office are on different ends of the lobby. They're not even connected with one another. We talked about ADA. And then at the modulars, the wooden exit stairs are problematic. Cracked foundation at 3 corners, we talked about that. We need some masonry work over here. Aging MEP is mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Chamberlain Street School, again, we've got modulars. We've got 4 classrooms outside of the envelope of the building. You're using guidance and special education are using stage space. The nurse and the main office are both undersized. We don't have a secure entrance. We did make some improvements. We have a pass-through window, but we don't actually have the secure entrance where someone can go from the vestibule into the office to interact, like for a meeting or something. We've got no ADA left on the stage, ADA toilets. We need some masonry repairs, soffit and trim repairs, casework again, new lockers. I don't know if you're familiar with the lockers in the hallway there. They're pretty rough at Chamberlain Street. Gonic School, the library, we've got a lot of, the overview of Gonic, you've got a lot of copiers and stuff out in the hallway. Stuff is spilling out into the hallways outside of the library, kind of in that area where the old building and the new building transition back and forth into each other. You'll see desks and people doing stuff out in hallways, and we like to avoid that if we can. We've got, again, we're trying to share the PE storage and the stage and the cafeteria tables, and there's not really enough room to do that as well as we could be doing it. Stair and utility fire separation is needed in the old part of the building. The music, art, and OT rooms are in the basement of the old building. It's a little bit rough down there. Masonry repairs needed. We're working on that. We have masonry dollars in the budget. We have trouble hiring a mason to do the work. McClellan Elementary School. McClellan, you've got kind of, you've got so many additions there. You've got a lot of different ages of the building. But then in the 1959 portion of the building, the doors are too narrow to become ADA compliant. Again, we've got problems with the vestibule and the way people get from the outside to the office or into the school. We've got combined spaces. We've got undersized library. We've got masonry and joint repairs needed, soffit and trim. And East Rochester. The Reach building has a history of moisture problems. So East Rochester, we're in really good shape. It's brand new. So the middle school, is overall in pretty good shape. There's really nothing here. One of the things you'll hear under safety and code items, the front entrance vestibule, direct access. Well, that's what I just told you, we're applying for a grant to fix that. That's one of the major concerns. Moving forward, the stuff at the middle school, it all seems pretty well in hand. It's kind of things that we could take care of through our regular maintenance and our regular CIP budget. But we'll point out, they're talking about the boys' locker rooms. They don't have shower stalls. It's the gang shower. The girls' side is shower stalls. I'm not sure that kids take showers, but if we were to at some point do a review of athletic needs at the Spalding High School, which is something we've talked about in the past, we'd probably want to fold this into that review and decide what is the direction to take with these locker rooms in both of those facilities. That leads me nicely into the Spalding High School. Some concrete work out front, it's a little bit of ADA work, handrail and guardrails. There's not much there. The biggest thing that you're going to see at the Spalding are the items 10, 11, and 12. The band and chorus, we've talked about needing a new floor in there. But we don't want to just go in there and plop a new floor in. We really want to do a complete needs review of the space. We were lucky enough to get some new weight room equipment at the Spalding High School, but the room that it went into isn't ideal. So the athletic needs assessment of what those spaces should look like in the future and what we want to work towards is a vision we don't have at this point, but it's one we need to work towards having that vision and working that into our 5, 10, 15-year plan. And the aging MEP is a big one. The vast majority of that building is heated by steam. In Honeywell in 2004 did an energy project where they put in new steam boilers, but it's all the old steam piping. There's miles of 1939 steel pipe buried in the walls there. We've got, in the electrical system of the building, we've got every iteration of electrical from 1939 to now. There's all kinds of different wiring in there over the years. So those are the kinds of things that the MEP would address in the high school. So I know I just threw a whole ton of stuff at you. And like I said, there's no test where I'm asking you to remember this, but what are the priorities? In my estimation, I think Nancy Loud needs to be addressed now, not in 5 years, but we need to have a plan to move forward very soon. The modulars have been, from before I worked in the district, that was the #1 priority of the school board was to get rid of the modulars. We still have them. We still need to take care of that. School Street has a lot of problems. The first 3 could possibly be addressed in one solution, might take care of items 1, 2, and 3 with the elementary school. But what I really want to drive home is that say we do that, say we achieve that. It's not time to sit back and say, great job, we did it. Because we've still got William Allen and we've still got Chamberlain. So we need the 5, the 10, the 15. We need all of that in our plan to know where are we headed, what is the solution, what do we want to work towards. The middle school, I think we can address it through CIP. Like I said, there's nothing huge there, there's nothing that's going to break the bank, there's nothing that's going to threaten school closure, we're in a fine place right there. And the high school priorities are the things we just talked about, band and chorus, needs assessment, athletic space, needs assessment, and we're going to start looking at that steam heating replacement, and what that's going to look like moving into the future. So that's pretty much all that I have.
Go ahead, Paul.
Mr. Talia, and just for clarity, because I truly don't understand what it means, if I could, you brought up number 5 on the chamber, it says corridor wall needs smoke seal. Can you explain what that means? It says safety and code items under Chamberlain summary.
So I talked about the stairwells need to be fire separation because smoke will go into a stairwell. Corridors are the same thing. When you move through a corridor, there's not supposed to be any penetrations. Like if you pop a ceiling tile here and you find a penetration that goes where someone ran a wire at some point, that's supposed to get fire stopped and sealed. So that the corridor, when you close the doors, the corridor is a vacuum not connected to any of the other spaces. And in the older buildings, you just don't have that because they've been around for so long and
They weren't designed to do that.
and somebody got up there with a drill and stuck a wire through at some point before fire stop was even invented. And so that's the kind of thing we're talking about with
I
that.
wasn't sure if that was specific to a wall barrier or something.
It's a general kind of a condition.
Thank you.
So,
Anyone else?
First off, thank you for this.
Yeah.
sir,
Second off, and I don't know if this comes to building or probably 5 years, but I would like to see scheduled walk through these buildings, to be honest with you. I know, and I know we can call and individualize, but like as a group, or whether it be 5 years, maybe a village, I mean, you know, by no means do I doubt anything he says, but when I need to pitch to people that, no, this is as needed as it can be, you know, then.
We've done them in the past. Would it be possible to maybe do one every couple of months where we go to a school and you show us in relation to this project?
I've worked for you. I'm happy to, I'll make myself available whenever you need me.
Building, since it's a building recommendation,
Yeah. But I think if we want to do a meeting, like, we know that Nancy Loud is your #1, and we don't need to see the modulars, I don't think, because we know what they.
Well, and as we were just saying, you could make a recommendation to 5-year walk all those buildings, or next, is it next Monday, or two Mondays? Two Mondays from now, 5-year meets. So you could pick, Mr. Toddy had the top 3 priorities, so you could go to those 3 schools and physically walk those schools before, the first hour of the meeting, if you want, you could do that.
And again, it's just again, we're the people that are trying to, you know.
And I think there's value, because it's
Absolutely.
easy to read on the paper, but to understand the context is
Right.
super valuable. I mean, I think it's important, so I agree that it makes
Well-
sense. We just figure out which, if it should be building or 5 years that doesn't, that's the organization market.
I mean, there's two sides of it. Technically, you'd want, the idea is the building's going to say, this is what our 5-year plan is, and then it presents the 5-year committee, so all committees across the school board are aware to see what might impact them. That's all it is.
Ties to
This is a
personnel,
building
right?
issue, but it might be, well, special certain different groups. Well, the policy might have to be rewritten, or special services, maybe there's needs of that group in, that should be considered in buildings, but it's already been considered. So
I think it needs to come from building to 5 years, so I think it should be building that looks at it first.
You know, as I'm listening to, like, the first school is Nancy Loud, and that is one of the, and the modulars. And those are both priority with a potential new school, you know, would address those. And, you know, any idea where we're standing with that? Have you heard anything else?
So we're following all the things we need to do. Last thing we did was spec out what it would look like to put a school on a couple of those sites, but that's the wrong thing to do. We had to do more soil testing, and Mr. Toddy's working with, is it Norway Plains or is the?
Norway Plains, yeah.
Norway
and
Plains. So
BHP.
we'll get results back. You know, it may be premature to say this, I hope it's premature to say this, but it's probably unlikely that a building project will be able to come to fruition in the timeline that we proposed to the joint committees due to the lack of land. But the purpose of this slideshow that Mr. Toddy put together is not just for right now. It's for the 5-year committee, it's to look at things. But again, I don't want to get too far down the road, but knowing that if we don't get project A across the finish line, there's a project B to use that money, because it would be irresponsible of me not to use the money afforded to us and our constituents within the community to say that we're not affecting the tax base. So when you look at Spalding High School, we're not going to remove Spalding High School off the map in Rochester, but there's almost a 100-year steam plant in there that probably needs to be replaced.
Right.
So we would be using those monies probably, again, depending on what building said, to replace that, because that is a known issue that needs to be addressed at some point.
So where do we go? Do we
I
just
think we just, I would make a motion. Do we need a motion? I don't think we need a motion. I would just ask the superintendent to schedule our September meeting at one of these schools.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
That way we can go there, do our meeting, we can have Mr. Toddy do a walkthrough and show us what we're looking at. That would be what I would recommend if the superintendent agrees.
Well, the only issue is that you've got waterfall meetings, so you have personnel, you would stop. So again, remember, all of you can come to any meeting, and I think if you make a recommendation that 5-year invite the entire board, we start the meeting at Nancy Loud, 5-year, two Mondays from
Why
now.
don't we just have the meeting?
We can have the meeting at Nancy Loud. Or you could do Nancy Loud and go to Chamberlain, and then you could do it at Nancy Chamberlain.
Because then you have the chair of every
Logistics of it,
member of every committee, so that makes sense.
I think it's fair to say, we all know, because of the whole trying to get land and everything, that's more of a priority at the moment, because everything else is gonna fall in line, you got more space, so. That makes sense.
It makes sense, because it makes it easy, if we can physically see it, then we know, like, okay, we gotta look at debt service, and how far out can we do a project like that? Like, there's some shells to move there, so I understand why 5-year makes the most sense. So if the chair of 5 years is okay with that, the superintendent aligns us to do a tour of Mr. Toddy on that one.
So I guess I would also want to urge this board to take an exceedingly long view. Building one school ticks 3 boxes. You know, we've talked about maybe we want to get away from small schools. I don't know, that's a political decision. It's not, I'm a bureaucrat, for better or worse. You know, I'll execute your political will. You guys tell me what you want to do, and we'll figure out a way to get it done. Maybe we want to go to the four big schools, north, south, east, west. Somebody had thrown that idea out there. That's a political will, that's a political decision. What is the long-term future of these buildings look like? If we build a school right now, say if we get see building 8, we've ticked 3 boxes, but now we come back to a William Allen or a Chamberlain, do we start pumping money into that aging infrastructure just to keep it alive? And there's tons of peer-reviewed stuff out there about the cost of maintaining an old building and the cost of a new building. And it costs more to keep that old building serviced, to keep adding, we put in a new electric service, we put a new roof, and we have to do new doors and windows, and then technology changes and we need something else. And at the same time, you end up with an old building with a lot of nice stuff bolted onto it. So it's that really long view. I think maybe the school works with the city to come up with a planning, like what do the people of Rochester, what do the elected officials of Rochester want for the future of the schools? That might be a nice piece of the
That's what I was
future.
thinking. In these discussions, with this as a basis for it, I think we need to do some serious PR, positive PR about why we're looking at them and what we're doing and what the issues are, so that this isn't a surprise to anybody.
Sounds like a town hall meeting would be a good thing. Bring the community in, share this kind of information.
Absolutely, and the issue we're running
Have
into
them
is exactly
brainstorm
the
with
issue
us.
we're running into right now. Right, Mark Twain, they're not making any more land,
No.
right, and the land is the issue.
Yeah.
With our bus routes and.
I think before we put the cart before the horse, it's imperative that we understand where we as a body
Right.
decide where we're gonna go. We've gotta physically scale this thing out in comparison to a 5, 10, 15. We've gotta look at debt service, income, student population, like, we've got some work to do. So, I agree, it's a great idea, but we've gotta build the fact, going in now is like handing everybody crayons and notebooks, it doesn't make sense.
You can't build that without community input.
Right, we
So
gotta
you
have
gotta
people
start
on
with
our
community
side.
input first, figure out kind of an idea of what they want, with the understanding that we're working parallel processing where we're trying to figure out what we can and can't do as a school district, what should our priorities we feel should be. But at the same time, you can still do that community input. Do that.
I agree with the community input. The problem that I see sometimes when you have those input sessions is you still have to lead them to it, like, this is the trough, it's what we want it to look like.
Mhm.
I mean, we knew at one point that this was the time frame to look at, before we knew state aid, about 24 million, we were playing with that idea of finance on that committee for a bond book project. That wouldn't even cut a 3-4 school idea to consolidate more. There's been, I know, conversations out there about more consolidation. Keep in mind that we had how many years before, even I was on the board, the conversation started, and I remember coming in soon, it was like, here, we looked at the middle school, consolidating, bringing 5th grade up. I know there was one day we had a conversation of, do we create a school environment that it's a 5th and 6th, and then you have a 7th and 8th? But then you're almost like, what we've determined is you're just adding more small schools. It's great, but the problem is, we need land. So if we have X number of land options, and I love an option if we could find a piece of land that says, okay, year 1 is the current plan we have with these 3, the modulars and those 2 schools that we've been identified. Year 2 is another school there that could move another program on the same parcel and share the grounds, but they have their own facility, so it gives that common space versus a gym.
Common core.
Yeah, but I'm looking at more of, you can have a cafeteria, a multi-purpose room, there we go. I have to look at you because you keep on saying it. And then we go across town and look for more land. That's a complete new construction, and then we wipe away we turn away from our current infrastructure. Makes sense in my mind, but it all starts with, we gotta buy the land when we can buy the land. Because everyone else is building on it.
That's why
So, city buy the land.
Right, it's important to know that.
Well, that's the thing,
You
we
can't buy the land.
physically can't, we have to, but we have to bring them to say,
We'll tell them
this is what we
want.
want, this is where we want it, and then hope that they agree. And our
That's
job
my
is,
idea with the PR, is to kind of avoid, as long as you can, the public input, because we're giving them information.
yeah,
They can't
be-
do good input without the proper information. So if we do PR along our study, if you will,
Oh,
then they can provide input when they have the knowledge that we have.
And I agree with you, Tom. I think public input is essential, and it's essential because people understand it, but we've seen it, there's a very big divide between what we can afford to do and what people want, right?
Well, yeah.
Like, if we could have put bells and whistles on the tech center that we really wanted, that would have been a way more expensive building, but you know how it works, right? We're fiscally obligated to meet the tax cap, and that really ties what we can do for debt service. So I agree with Ann that we can give the information, we're working toward a process, but until we know where the ducks fall,
Yeah.
it's not even a conversation.
Well, that's why I
Go to city
said
council,
kind of
go, yeah.
parallel process.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like-
If you go to city council, go, hey, we need $140 million debt service because we're gonna put in 3 new buildings, they're gonna laugh at you, right? And then the community's upset with us, it's like, I thought we were doing this. So it's a liquidity, it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
I agree, there's gotta be a way to do a dual finger, but let's first assess what Mr. Toddy's brought for information and really gain that. Now, okay, we know this is ABC, right? So
I totally understand that part. In town hall meetings, you don't commit to anything. Like,
Right, I agree with you.
It's really true information sharing.
No, I
With the community, and I just think it's a process you can do together, because I agree with Nat. You have to figure all that piece out, we have to make decisions as a 5-year committee on what our priorities are.
We have
gonna
to
be,
agree.
all that stuff, so I get all that, and I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like you said, Ann, like, having the community input and knowing that the community, at least if these are on our ideas and on our tracks as far as potential projects to work on, I just think with more community input, you have less resistance when it comes time to make change happen.
Well, that in the community knows the process.
Yeah.
That- That's the thing. I can tell you right now, you go out and ask anybody, here's, we're talking about a new school,
Yeah.
and what do you mean you're not gonna get the aid for that? Because you guys, we're gonna get blamed for not getting the aid,
Right,
100%.
when we,
and they don't understand the process. Right? The general public doesn't know the process.
Yeah, I think we've got to sit, Mr. Toddy provided, and again, thank you, I apologize.
yeah,
Um,
that's fine.
I think the information's essential. I'm gonna go through it and break it all down, because it's a lot. But I think this is part of the conversation, like, okay, how do we take that information and really prioritize it? And that's gonna be a back and forth, that's gonna take us some time. And you gotta know fiscally where we can be, you gotta look at your debt service, what's gonna come online, what does a new school look like, what's that debt service, when does it come on track? Like, we've got a lot to measure through, but I think structurally understanding, priority 1 versus priority 2 is more important than even understanding anything else. Because if we don't know where the attention has to be, we're aimlessly wandering through a path. Let's not do that.
I hope we have the support from the city when we get ready to.
We've had nothing but positive from the city. We've had some challenges when it came down to some little stuff, like nitpicky stuff. Like, I mean, from the tech center, the reality came down to like that additional $265,000 we wanted from David that they took back. That was a stupid conversation to have, but that's how it works, right? But traditionally, they're very supportive. We did East Rochester, we did the tech, they understood
No,
why we were
you're right, they are.
Yeah, so I don't want to make it sound like they're not supportive, and I don't think you're saying that. I think
No.
it's important. So they're pretty good. I
But we
think-
had an opportunity,
I agree.
and, it's,
It was squandered.
right.
So, sorry, Hunter.
Go ahead.
If we're right now, I know we've been focusing, and guys are doing great, Mr. Toddy, like, let's get this 350 student school moving forward. I mean, looking at the timeline, it's bleak, in my opinion, that this could happen.
And that's what Kyle said that earlier.
Yeah, it's,
Let's start focusing.
does that make even sense to even go down this road anymore and say, listen, we need it as a community to figure out what we want to do. It doesn't help our immediate needs.
Well, I mean, Mr. Toddy and I have talked about that a few times. I think the work that we're doing right now might not come to fruition as soon as we want to, but it's information we can put to use at a later date.
Right.
So I think it's probably still good data to have. But it is coming at a cost, that's for sure. So, there's a cost for soil testing and different things, so we're working on it. Mr. Toddy just put up the timeline that we had
Right.
worked. This has been revised and updated since we met as the joint committees. I think the last meeting was maybe March. But you can see that red line. So April, June, right?
Well, this is, let me see if this is.
September.
Yeah, so this is the revised one.
I thought I had to change my prescription.
Yeah, this is the updated one, and This is from Van saying when we crossed the Rubicon, basically, on, well, the land acquisition was in August. And she said, well, not quite the same shade of pink, but October. We're meeting with the DOE in September to review our building 8 application. I would think by the end of September, we'll have a really good idea of whether any of this is gonna come to fruition sooner or later.
Yeah.
It's gonna come to fruition at some point, right? It's gonna,
Right.
with or without us, it's gonna happen eventually.
Just how much we have to pay for it.
There is one question we asked, and I know it's a matter of, we gotta figure out what we wanna do first. If, and I know the application's $350, but is there any, if we increased, then it can't void us out completely?
No, it's all city costs.
It's our cost.
Yeah,
So
so we still can't get like, well, we'll still give you X number.
So you get, the application is based on the square footage of the application put forth. So making it up, you wanted one building for this amount of square foot, and you decided with the architect, we're gonna add a building, like a sister building to it. That sister building is all outside of the application and all on the tax base.
But the original
You'll
scope
still do
would
that.
work, okay.
You'll still get it.
And if we, let's say you had a building that was, we're gonna use very simple math here, 1,000 square feet, and you said, we're gonna do 2,000 square feet, the additional cost is on the city, but we could get funds off of this.
As long,
It's within the same four walls.
yes, but remember, the application is based on building 8, at least the building 8 portion of it, is built on solving deficiencies. So the application said, you're doing this application because you're solving these problems. So as long as those problems are still solved within that
Yes.
footprint, that works.
I'm just thinking in case we could solve future problems as this is pointing out. In theory, not saying to do it, just, okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. That gives us a lot to think about, to talk about. So with,
Sorry, just one question, Mr. Toddy, do you have a rough estimate of how long the wetland study would take for that one parcel?
It's gonna take at least until,
September?
yeah, because so, any of the parcels we're looking at are all borderline. There's just so much wetland that we can't, some lots you can walk in there and you can say, oh my God, I don't even gotta put a stake in the ground, I know there's enough land here to do what you wanna do. Everything we're looking at, because we've been talking about it, if it's buildable, it got built, right?
Yeah,
Unless you go far out,
yeah.
and that's not where we're at, we're looking in a kind of an area where most of everything's already been developed that could be developed. So the pieces that are left are borderline. And so the first step was to look at it and do a rough assessment and say, okay, well, this could work. And that's cost money. To get to that point is about $5,000 worth of engineering, just to say, okay, we think this might work. The next step is to get into it a little bit better, start drawing out and say, do I still think it's gonna work? Because now you're gonna spend another $5,000 or $7,000. The actual survey portion of it is probably a 2-month process, and it will probably cost over $20,000 to get that work done. So we don't wanna spend that money when we know we're borderline, right? We wanna kind of be prudent and take the baby steps and keep saying, okay, are we still safe? Okay, I think another step, are we still safe? Okay, before we commit too much funds, because it just doesn't seem like a
Right,
best use of dollars.
but aren't we at the point where we can narrow it down to one parcel and not spend the money, time, and resources on 2 out of the 3?
There's one that's percolated to the top, yes.
And is that the only one we're focusing on moving forward?
I've asked him to continue to look at some other, behind Chamberlain Forest, which was previously ruled out as being too wet. Some things have changed out there in the past 15 years. So I think it's worth, if we could be pleasantly surprised to say, golly, it's a piece of city-owned property that we might be able to do something with.
And the idea that
And that's a lot.
this work will not be in vain, because at some point, it could be used.
And the other piece of it, that this work will not be in vain, if at some point we're probably going to be applying to the Corps of Engineers or the state to fill some amount of wetland. And the way you support that is you say, I didn't just look at one property, I had to look at all my options, I looked at everything that was available, because that's their first question. Well, you want to fill wetland, well, did you do all your homework, did you look at all your options? We want to be able to say, yes, we did.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Is everybody all set now? Okay. So that was other, any other? I believe they're having a dedication of the auditorium on Wednesday at noon. Do you know anything about that, Dave?
Oh,
sorry, no.
To Joanne or whatever?
Yeah,
Okay.
of the
It's
auditorium.
up in
We haven't
second.
been notified about anything.
I got an email from the band. So let me respond to them that they need to
Yeah,
make some calls.
cool, they coordinate that with the school.
Yeah, concert.
I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm not in the loop, but
But
I'll jump
I
in.
don't know about it, so sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me check on that. And that's it for other, any other information anybody needs? Motion to adjourn,
So
Second.
all in favor?
I